Let's talk about the best camera to hold. Now, I'm lucky enough to own all of these Nikon F models, and I regularly use them, which makes a big difference. You can't judge what is best really unless you have used them out in the field. And what is best for me in my hands might be different than what is best for you. In sixth place for the best camera to hold is the Nikon F4. Now it's got this really chunky grip where the batteries go into the grip. So it's actually quite big, especially for my hands. I do appreciate they have this little ridge on the back, which I really like, which just helps. And I can get used to it, but it is just a bit chunky. With the F5, they put the batteries in the bottom. The batteries in here just make this a bit big. So my hands, I feel, are a bit small for the F4. And also, if I'm holding this with my left hand, it is a bit large. Like in one word, this is sort of a chunky camera. This is without the battery pack, which I also have, which will make it a bit heavier and bigger. So the fifth best camera to hold is the Nikon F. Now it's thin, it's easy enough to hold, small, way smaller than the chunky F4, but there's no ridge for my hand to hold the camera here. It's easy to hold with my left hand. I can hold it like that, which is great. The shutter release is further back. So when you're holding the camera, you've got to put your finger back to take that picture. It's modeled after their rangefinder at the time, the Nikon SP, almost exactly. So that is where the Nikon SP shutter release was. The fourth best camera to hold is the Nikon F2. It is very much like the Nikon F, but the shutter release button has been moved forward. So that makes it a lot easier. There's still no grip ridge for my right hand like they start in the Nikon F3, but it is pretty easy to hold in my right hand or my left hand walking around with it like this. The third best camera to hold is the Nikon F5. Now, a lot of work has gone into the styling of this camera, and especially the styling of the grip. You can really tell the batteries are not in the grip part like in the F4, so this is thinner and just easier to hold. The batteries are down under here, and it has these little ridges for my fingers to go into, and this little ridge here. It just, everything fits so beautifully. When I turn the camera and I'm using the vertical shutter release button, it just works so great. My hand just wraps around it. One thing is, it is a bit heavy, and I feel like if I'm holding it with my left hand, that's not as easy. I don't usually hold it with my left hand, so that lets it down a bit. My second favorite camera to hold is the F3. It has this little ridge that sets it apart from the F and the F2, makes it such a great camera to hold. It works really well in my left hand as well, so I'm holding this. The size of this camera is just gorgeous. It's lighter, it's solid, it just feels wonderful. So yeah, it's easier to carry around than the F5, even though the F5 might have a better designed grip, more futuristic, but I prefer to hold this camera because it works great in my right hand and my left hand. So the best camera to hold is the Nikon F6. It is just the perfect size. It feels great in my hand. It has that little ridge there that they have from the Nikon F5. I love the command dials. A thumb pad reminds me of my F100. Now, if you do get the extra grip here, you can put this on. That has the thumb pad, another thumb pad on it as well, which is great. So for focusing, if you want to do that, that feels great. It is similar to maybe what you would expect with a modern digital camera, but it is a bit larger than the F3, you can see, but it still feels great in my hand. So that is the best camera to hold, is the Nikon F6. I would love to hear what you think, because what works for me may differ than what works for you. Do you have any questions about these cameras? Is there any features or comparisons that you would like to see? If you like the content I'm creating, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much.